Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
All right. Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'm joined by Stephanie Quincy, partner at Greenberg Traurig, one of Arizona's top employment litigators, advising companies on high-stakes disputes, compliance, and leadership decisions in complex workplace environments. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Why don't you, real quick, explain to everybody what workplace law is currently dealing with?
Oh my gosh, what is it not dealing with currently? I feel like everything you read that politically is going on is playing out in the workplace.
Right.
Unfortunately, we're getting sort of, the rubber end of the road as far as all of it, between wage and hour, sexual harassment, diversity in the workplace. All those political topics are playing out in the workplace as well. But then we always have the fun stuff, like, people hitting on people they shouldn't be hitting on at work. And people signing really stupid contracts that they've pulled off the internet and they have no idea what they mean, but they're using them anyway. So we have same old and then some new stuff.
So, what is the current state of relationships at work?
Okay, first of all, if you want to go to law school in one sentence, just answer every question, it depends. You will sound like a very experienced attorney. So it depends. I mean, it really does depend. If you're a manager, super duper bad idea. Just very, very bad idea. And I do a lot of training in this space. And I always tell my clients who are managers, look, if you want to date somebody who you supervise, you are essentially putting your career kahunas in that person's hands. It's fraught with peril because the whole law of sexual harassment is really about a power disparity. If you're not supervising a person, it's
peer to peer.
Yeah,
same level.
Yeah, it's less problematic. But a lot of people kind of need a heads up that no means no. Like if somebody says they don't want to go to lunch with you 3 times in a row, it's not because they're that busy. They don't want to go. So training helps those folks too. But it's just, we have one relationship, if we're lucky, that works out permanently. And relationships tend to go awry. And when they go awry in the workplace, that's when I get brought in. And, I've got children to educate and a house to pay for. So I'm appreciative of people who decide to pursue their romantic interests at work, but it's usually a pretty bad idea.
Okay. So that's kind of still the same.
Same. I think when I was growing up, the phrase was don't fish off the company pier. And I would say that logic still holds.
Okay. Are you seeing any patterns right now that business owners are underestimating?
Yeah, wage and hour. We're here in Arizona, which has typically been a very employer-friendly state, save for a couple of laws that are unique to us. California, I refer to it as the People's Republic. They've got all of their own laws, and a lot of them are wage and hour laws. We are starting to see an influx of those kind of lawsuits in Arizona. So making sure you have people classified properly. And a lot of people in business think that means, am I paying a salary or am I paying them hourly? Believe it or not, there's actually a legal test that's more than just paying people salary that makes them exempt. So misclassifications, we're seeing a lot of those kinds of problems. Failing to pay people overtime is a big problem. And so that's one pattern that I would definitely tell employers out there to be cognizant of, because it's coming to you. And no matter what administration we have, no matter what your politics are, everyone pretty much agrees we should pay employees for what they work
done. Yeah. Where do smart, well-intentioned leaders sort of accidentally expose themselves to the biggest sort of risks today?
I see a lot of people, and we were talking about this earlier. I see a lot of people who confuse humor with leadership. Who think that being funny in some way that at times is off color is leadership.
Guilty.
Well, it's human. I mean, it's human nature, but you do have to be cognizant of, generational differences in the workplace.
Sure.
Uh, and also just, treading on what are called the protected categories, gender orientation, sexual orientation, race, national origin. We see a lot of national origin type issues. A lot of the cases that I have that are harassment cases, not sexual harassment, but other types of harassment, are really somebody thinking that they were being funny. And it's like, man, does not play in a
It's
courtroom.
no, I believe that. But it's all. I wonder also if it's the uh, a generational thing. I think I've seen this in a number of different workplaces where uh, perhaps some of the coworkers are more sensitive nowadays and more easily, I don't know if this is the right word, but triggered or upset.
Yeah. And, I'm not even getting into
I
is
guess
it woke?
culture
Is
is
it,
a lot
yeah,
of the culture at the place. It can be stifling when everyone's on eggshells, right?
yeah.
And production goes down. Nobody likes their job anymore. So you got to find that balance, and that sounds like a particularly big challenge.
It is. And just thinking before you speak. My God, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. My best clients are not only ones who think they're funny and they're not, they tend to be my repeat clients, but also people who manage by thinking that being direct with people is a management
Mhm.
style, that everything that's in your head has to come out your mouth. And so it isn't really walking on eggshells as much as it is just being cognizant that
Yeah,
different
filtering a
people,
little bit.
yeah, that people have different, you can use the word triggers, but just, sensitivities,
Right.
things, I had a case recently where a manager kept referring to another manager by his wife's name when she would say something that he disagreed with. He would refer to her as his wife's name in a very pejorative way. And again, he thought that was really funny. Not so much,
Oh,
not so much at all. So it's things like that, just silliness, people saying the N word at work. It's like nobody ever should use that word ever. You've got kids, I've got kids, we raise them to say that is just a word you never, ever, ever say. But some people think that somehow if they have a buddy who's black, they can slap them on the back and say that, and it's funny. And it's like, no, 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 not so
right,
much.
right. So a lot of this isn't necessarily a lot of the issues are not actual legal violations, but come down more to poor communication and leadership.
But that does become a legal violation. A hostile work environment can be based on racial comments, can be based on sexual comments, can be based on comments of a gendered nature. And so while it
I mean,
sounds,
calling your coworker your wife's name doesn't feel like a legal violation.
but it is because it's a
But
pejorative way to talk to a woman. It's talking down to a woman, putting her in her place. Because maybe you're implying she doesn't. I mean, maybe his wife is a CEO of some large company.
right, I
That
mean,
wasn't that wasn't the case in this circumstance,
it-
But it was
everything's open to
very,
interpretation. So it's this weird.
but to me, that's really not interpretation. That's a gendered comment. That is a comment that I am dismissing you, in part because of your gender. So it's like, think it through and maybe you say,
But if
um,
if he was female and he had a female wife who was CEO, I can think of all sorts of various scenarios
but
where
also just bad ideas. I mean,
right.
and these things, it's like, it's people are like names or pronouns or whatever. Okay, first of all, pronouns never come out of my mouth the right way. I try very hard. I still mess up they,
I
them,
just
and all of that stuff. But
I was a good
genuine,
student when I was younger, and it's hard to change them in my head.
yeah, exactly. But just trying, you're making that effort. You're not going to have a problem. The cases I've had in that area is when
Mm,
someone is intentionally doing it.
yeah,
And
deliberate.
when I do training in this area, it's like if you meet someone whose name is Robert, you don't walk up, slap him on the back, and call him Bobby, right? I mean, that would be a rude thing to do. Common courtesy is to try to communicate with people in a way that isn't offensive to them, and at least try. But
Right.
some of these things I think people kind of make harder than they really are on both sides, by the way,
Sure.
on
Sure.
both sides.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be good at this because I'm always thinking of exceptions. I played on a football team where the coach, he went out of his way to not call, he call him Bobby. But, first time you ever met him, hi, I'm Robert. So, hey, Bobby, white shoes. All right, welcome to the team, right? And then he'd move on. And
High school football
that's a
coach,
culture in itself. Sorry.
yeah, and high school football coach culture may work as the high school football coach.
Right.
But again, it's like where these things end up if they become problematic is in a courtroom. And a courtroom is a very different atmosphere. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is it just doesn't play. I mean, you're sitting
Well,
very
again, sorry.
atmosphere.
I mean, that was apparently one of President Bush's charms is he would give nicknames to everybody, right? Like that, in that vein too. And I'm like, well, it seems to work at the highest level, right? It's weird.
But my guess is that President Bush was also kind and considerate enough that if somebody came to him and said, I really don't like being called that, he would stop doing it. And that's the problem with pronouns. I think I've had one case in the last 35 years that involved pronouns. That's how long I've been practicing. And it was a case where the manager intentionally kept calling the person the wrong name, told other people to do it, laughed
Oh, wow. Yeah.
at it. I mean, it's basic, again, it's basic courtesy and kindness. So, making people feel welcome. I mean, ask my kids, I am the nickname queen. But if my kid says to me, Mom, I really don't like it when you call me that. Please don't call me that.
Right.
I wouldn't keep doing it.
Sure.
And that's what, to me, juries really pick up on is like, if there's a sense of animus or meanness, juries don't like that. And neither do judges. And frankly, it doesn't matter who appointed that judge. When a judge is sitting up there on the bench, and by the way, they're called judges because that's what they do. They judge you.
Yep.
And the person on, the witness stand is explaining why he continued to call this person these names after she said, I'm uncomfortable being called that. Please don't do it. It's icky. It doesn't look good. Anytime I'm explaining, because I only represent defendants, right? I only represent companies, the employer. My firm doesn't allow me to represent employees at all. But anytime there's an explanation that is, oh, he just does that to everybody. He's a jerk to everybody. That's like, oh, we got to start adding zeros to the number that the jury's going to award because it's, every juror's been an employee. Every juror has been on the receiving end of some of that treatment. So
you just reminded me of another, there's a Friends episode where Chandler's boss used to slap everybody on the butt. Do you remember that episode?
Oh my gosh, yes.
He said, I wish he'd stop doing it. So he stopped doing it. And then he felt left out later. And so then he wanted to, Then he came back wanting it.
Yeah, crazy, right? Yeah, crazy. And in this day and age, hopefully nobody's doing stuff like that. But every time I say that, it's like a case lands on my desk and it's like, seriously, someone's still whapping people on the butt. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is this the moment when these situations typically turn from manageable into a legal problem? Is that usually averted with education? Is that a big part of what you guys have to work with?
Yeah, and early intervention. I don't know if you ever watched the Andy Griffith Show. It is like my favorite HR employment law training ground. Barney Fife with his nip it in the bud. If the earlier we can stop it, the less toothpaste out of the tube, the more fixable situations are.
Right.
And sometimes it is just a matter of training people and just saying, hey guys, these are kind of the rules. It's even interesting to me, like cursing. There's some workplaces where people curse a lot. And there are some workplaces where people don't curse at all. And it would be really, it would thud, if you know what I mean, if somebody did that. Part of it is understanding what environment you're in.
Right.
And making sure that you're picking up on those social cues.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who work in the OR, and it is a stressful place. And
yes, it is.
There are younger people in there who are not used to it, and they file complaints against the surgeons and other stuff. And the surgeons are like, if you can't handle this, what are you going to do when everything else goes to crap? We need to be able to trust each other and be open and right. And it's complicated and things happen fast. And when you're not on the same team right, and expecting them to change in the middle when the blood hits the ceiling and stuff, and it gets really stressful, and people don't always behave as we'd like them to. Uh,
I will tell you that there's a lot of published cases. I'm not going to get into anything I've handled specifically because I do represent a lot of employers in healthcare. It really depends on what the comments are. I mean, if the comments are, shit, someone hand me a clamp or whatever, that's
right,
one thing. If it's Betsy, your boobs look great today, that's another thing. I mean, there are
sure.
lines that are just respect lines that are crossed. And, the more, certainly in a courtroom environment, and I think even in a legal proceeding, the more authority and power our society gives you, the more they expect
Mhm.
of you.
Right.
Having a doctor on that stand who is some noted surgeon who's going to have to explain to a judge and jury why he kept talking about Betsy's breasts, that's not fun. It's super icky. And while I understand the sort of tense environment that is going to lead to more of that, it really is a question of what judgment are you exercising? Is it
Sure.
crossing the line?
Sure. The cases I think of are usually when somebody doesn't do what they're told, or they do it wrong, or they don't do it quickly enough, and they get berated and yelled out, and they run out of the room. And they're like, "All right, get somebody in here who can actually
Yeah.
do this critical task,"
Well,
right?
and
And
there
they don't
are
have any
just,
tolerance.
yeah, they're high pressure environments. I mean, I remember taking an associate to trial for the first time. God, this had to have been 20 plus years ago. And, her telling me, I don't know if I can stay past 5. And it's like, this may be the wrong job for you.
Right.
Because you don't say to a judge and a client, gee, I'm sorry, we're going to need to wrap it up about 4:30 today.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. And so,
Great
and
example.
but to me, it's also communication. I mean, my law firm, which I've shared with you, is the fourth largest law firm in the world. Clients expect a lot of us. They pay us a lot of money and they expect a lot out of us. Judges expect that they are going to be getting top-notch legal work from us. That's pressure. That is a pressure environment. Some people respond to that well. Some people are like, I don't know if I can do this every day. And it's like 10-4. I get it. This is the far spectrum of the legal world. There's a million other legal jobs you may be great at that aren't as pressure packed. And so, being able to have those conversations with people is important
Right.
too. But,
For sure.
the generational thing, I think, plays into this too.
On
Um,
that note,
yes, yes.
without maybe some specifics, so what's an example of a situation that started small, maybe something on social media or something that turns into something bigger that could have been prevented?
Okay, all right, get ready for it. And anyone who's listening to this, the next things you hear out of my mouth will not be G-rated. So social media, like young kids post stuff on social media all the time now. I mean, I'm so old, all I have is Facebook, and my children have threatened me within an inch of my life if I get TikTok or Instagram or any of that stuff. So I don't do that. But the things people post on it without thinking, some people's profiles are public. Everybody can see it. I mean, even on Facebook, like the old lady Facebook, I've got friends and I've got friends who are clients, customers. And so anything I'm posting, they see too. So just in the last month, I had a client call that, one of their employees had a bridal shower, had a, bachelorette party in Vegas. And she
Very
posted,
different.
we didn't do that back in my day. We didn't do that. But she posted pictures of herself and several other employees taking shots from the penis vodka luge at this hotel.
The ice sculpture, for
Yes,
our listeners who may not know that. Okay.
yes, the penis ice luge. And some customers called to complain. And this was a business that reputation was very important to it and, presented itself as very buttoned down. Um, and honestly, I don't think it had ever crossed that employee's mind that doing that was a silly thing to do. But employers, it's like, who saw this? Who can see it? Um, and it becomes employers' business when it's customers,
They're
coworkers.
financially impacted. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So, not my favorite thing in the world to do, but, those conversations sometimes have to be had.
So it's probably a growing challenge, is educating employees of what they can and can't share. And I think they kind of know that hopefully they've been told that, once it's out there forever type of
Doesn't seem to
stuff.
be taking. Doesn't seem.
Isn't taking.
No, no, it doesn't seem to be taking. It used to be that when I would do this training, it's like what you learned in kindergarten is exactly right. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all and keep your hands to yourselves. Don't be touching anybody. You don't need to be touching anybody. Those workplace rules worked pretty well. Now with social media, and particularly people who have less experience in the workplace, I think they need more training. I think you need to tell them, look, if you are friends with one person at work who can see what you're posting, it's potentially going to be our issue.
Right.
So keep that in mind. I mean, if you friend your customers, if your posts on Instagram or TikTok or whatever are public, guess what? That may become our business. Just letting people know that and know we're not doing it to be big old meanies. We don't want to do this either. So just don't do it. Just don't do it. Send that penis ice luge photo. Just send it around via text to just your friends who don't work for us.
Yeah, that's kind of related to the culture and being open and being able to share without, feeling stifled. And they're like, oh, I can't do anything. You're right. You feel like you can't be open, restrictive in terms of personality and just. And I was also going to add that in a modern business sense, so much of brands are personal nowadays. So maybe this person lost some clients, but maybe they gained more clients, right? If people who are like, oh yeah, my friends just got married, right? They can identify, and I don't know, I'm reaching, but you can imagine how some of that could, in some
Yeah.
industries, right? So many people make their entire livelihood off of such posts.
Yes. Yes, indeed. But we don't do OnlyFans at work. We don't do OnlyFans at work. And that's another one. I think I told you I represent several employers in healthcare, and I also represent several airlines. And airlines
Okay.
have very strict rules about what you can do while you are in uniform, right? I mean,
Okay.
particularly flight crews. We really do not want to see pilots, holding up their, look at this bottle of Maker's Mark that I just killed. It's like, ooh,
Right.
were you close to the gate when you were doing
Yeah, you're
this?
representing,
Yeah,
the company.
yeah. And we've had several cases of flight attendants being on OnlyFans in their airline uniform. Well, being on
Yeah,
OnlyFans
temporarily in their uniform.
temporarily in their uniform. And so those things, it's like you wonder how we get drug into those things. It's like somebody
Okay.
always rats you out. There's
All right.
frenemies everywhere.
Right. So for people listening who realize they may have some gaps in this sort of, what's the first step they can take to get ahead of such things?
Make sure you have a good policy, and make sure your HR team knows what they're doing, and then do some training, and it doesn't have to be fancy, gee, hire this expensive outside lawyer to come in. Although I certainly do that, but do some training, just some common sense do's and don'ts kind of training. And again, I mean, one thing I always tell people, because I always think people think, oh, this is never going to come up. Everybody has a frenemy. Everybody has an ex. Everybody has someone, some family member who secretly harbors some grudge and are more than happy to rat you out. Like the number of calls, anonymous calls HR departments get. In Arizona, we're seeing a lot of immigration enforcement. And
Okay.
what we see is a lot of times, we got boyfriend and girlfriend. Oh, they love each other. They love each other. They tell each other all their secrets. And then let's just say that John decides to cheat on Rachel and Rachel ain't having it. So she calls INS or ICE and says, by the way, John is working on stolen identity. And the next thing you know, INS or ICE is showing up at a local restaurant to, ask to see John's paperwork and actually ask to see all the other paperwork for every employee at that
Right.
business. That happens more frequently than you would think.
Okay. This sounds like a lot of drama in general.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. It's never boring. Yes, it's wonderful. I thought I was going to do securities litigation when I graduated from law school. It was kind of a snooze. You can only read so many prospectuses before you're like, I want to poke my eyeballs out with knitting needles. So many years ago, the head of the employment group at the firm I was working is like, Quince, just come over, do one sexual harassment case. And I was like, wow, this is really fun. This is not boring at all. But yeah, it's a lot of drama. It's a lot of drama.
What percentage of sort of employment law is wages versus harassment versus what? Can you break it down into the major buckets for me?
Yeah, mostly, gosh, another big area we're seeing right now is FMLA ADA. And then Arizona has its own Arizona sick leave act where you've got to pay people certain amounts for work for to take off when
Okay.
they're sick.
This is family
Um,
medical leave for our listeners, right?
Yeah, they're two different things. Family and medical leave, the employee has to have worked for the employer for a year, at least 1,250 hours. ADA, you have a disability. So you have cancer, you have a hearing impairment, lots of things like that. Arizona sick leave law is you accrue certain hours for every hour you work, and then you can take that time off as sick pay, and your employer can't retaliate against you for taking that time off as sick pay. And then, of course, we have workers' comp too, if you happen to be injured while you're on the job. But all of those things, I would say that's probably 25% of the calls I get from clients, that bucket.
Okay.
And those problems can be complicated. And it used to be when I started practicing law, yes, I'm turning into the get off my lawn lady. Uh, when I started practicing law, there weren't that many workplace laws. And if you had some common sense, and reasonableness, you could probably navigate them. That is not true anymore. Dentures. Are dentures a disability? Recently had a case where a flight attendant was hired and showed up and had no teeth and said she didn't want to be wearing her dentures anymore. And I don't know if you've ever seen a person who has no teeth and is not wearing dentures, but there's a reason dentures were invented. Yeah, there was a reason
Yeah,
dentures were
yeah.
invented. And that question, it's like we have a split in the United States. Some circuit courts consider that a disability, some circuit courts do not consider it a disability. So that's more like the don't try it at home. Wage and hour is so easy for anybody to file a claim, and they add up so quickly. The burden is 100% on the employer to pay people correctly. And if they have done it wrong, not only do they pay me, they pay the other side's attorneys too. So we see quite a few of those claims.
Okay. So a quarter in the ADA family leave, a quarter of them are paid or pay or wage
Wage
issues.
and hour claims are becoming more and more predominant and prevalent. I'd say about 20% of what I do. We'll see if I get over 100%. All right. Maybe I could get some extra credit. But I do a lot of work in the restrictive covenant space, which is covenants not to compete, non-solicits. You can't solicit our employees if you leave. You can't solicit our customers.
Okay.
And I see a lot of that. And frankly, that is recession proof because, when your best
Yeah,
salesperson,
it probably amps up.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm just always shocked at how many people either have to have those drafted by attorneys who have no idea what they're doing. The law in that area has changed significantly and continues to change. And it's just unenforceable. And so they pull them out when it's time, to enforce them. And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, but you can't have a worldwide restriction for 25 years for,
Right.
for this guy who worked for you for 6 weeks. Sorry, but that's not going to happen. So, and I see a lot of those kinds of cases. And then the rest of the buckets really are more typical gender discrimination, sexual harassment, race discrimination, national origin discrimination, kind of the discrimination retaliation bucket. So whatever percentage I have left, we'll throw in there.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Do you have a favorite?
It's funny. My legal team, because I've got other attorneys who work on my team and staff members and, paralegals and legal assistants and all of that. They will say, Stephanie won't admit this, but her favorite thing is restrictive covenants because they're white hot. Like you get them and you have got to have a lawsuit on file quickly, like often within days. And trying to get your arms around the facts and get your arms around the law and charge into court and, do something to help a client. I really enjoy those. It's sick and it's wrong. I really enjoy those. And then sadly, I like wage and hour because wage and hour to me isn't all the emotion. It's, hey, did we make a mistake here? We sure did. Let's fix it. Or I understand why you're asking the questions. Let us explain to you how we didn't mess this up. And let's all go our separate ways. So you miss a lot of the, you're a racist, you're a sexist, which kind of gets tiring at the end of the day.
Okay. I would find that, yeah. Okay. Those both sound awesome. Okay. I think we're aligned there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting to me, the people who bring the claims alleging racism or sexism or something like that, I often will impassionately defend my client. And the other side is like, why are you so passionate about that? It's like, you called him a racist. That is like a horrible insult to somebody. I don't know why you think we're just going to write you a check and make this go away. I mean,
Right.
we're going to defend this.
Right. Right. Okay. Fourth largest firm
In the
in the
world. I know it's
in the
crazy,
world.
right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
So
We have 3,000 attorneys or something. We have an office in Dubai. Now, I've never been there, but we have one.
okay.
We
Okay.
have one.
How many of your cases and clients are here in Arizona?
It varies. Right now, probably about half.
Okay.
Half are in Arizona and half are scattered to the winds.
Okay. Okay. Depends upon your team. I mean, you work on different projects with different people. I imagine they bring you in when your specialty fits, right? For different cases.
Absolutely. And then a lot of clients that I have are national or international clients. So we help them out wherever the problems land.
Okay.
So, problem lands in Colorado, we'll handle that there. I've tried cases from, gosh, New York, Washington, D.C., Illinois, Colorado, Arizona, um, just wherever the problems land.
Okay. Nice. Well, that's great. You have an impact throughout the country. That's great.
Good, bad, or otherwise. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Do you have anything exciting coming up for the rest of 2026?
Gosh, I don't think I have any trials scheduled that are realistically going to go. Trials are my absolute favorite thing. They're a lot of fun to do. A lot of pressure, but a lot of fun to do. A lot of training. A lot of my clients are wanting a lot of training. They are seeing these kind of problems and trying to get out ahead of them. Um, so yippee. If you're an employment lawyer, it's like, wow, it's exciting. Um, that's about all I got. That's about all I got, Tim.
Okay. Do you have any sort of vision for the future? How things may be getting better or worse based off of the the working out of office or AI implications for the workforce and workplace?
Oh, those are such great questions. The out of office work, it's so interesting because I represent a number of clients that have really tried hard to get people back to the workplace.
Mhm.
And those efforts are ongoing. Some clients have more flexibility than other clients. That'll continue to be a real challenge. But, one thing I do say to people, especially when I do trainings, is just decide where you want to go because you're never going to be made CEO of a company when you haven't left your house. You limit yourself to the extent you are going to work from home 100% of the time.
A great point. I hadn't really thought about that for career development.
Well, and particularly in my career, I've got junior lawyers on my team. They need to be around. They need to be around and hear us talking in the hallways. And, most of our clients are pretty sophisticated. So a lot of them already have in-house employment lawyers. So when they're calling us with questions, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's something nobody's handled before. And it's like, how
Right.
would you deal with this? How would, what do you think about this? And missing out on those kinds of conversations is going to make a difference at the end of the day. So, it really is a question of decide where you want to land. AI, wow, the legal industry is going to change dramatically. I use AI more than I ever thought I would. When I started using AI, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be like everything I'm reading, hallucinations for sites and this and that. And you do
Right.
have to be careful. And we're very, very careful, very, very careful how we use AI. But it is going to change the profession. It really is. There's a lot of tasks that are happening in legal offices that AI can do better. I mean, to use a medical reference, I mean, AI is eventually going to be able to read X-rays, CAT scans.
But already can.
Yeah, better. But,
Yep.
people freak out about it. Have you seen the self-driving cars? They were tested in my neighborhood. So we've seen them down here for years. And
Right.
people freak out and they're like, oh my God, there's no driver in the car. And I'm like, yes, isn't it lovely? Isn't it lovely? Nobody to talk to you about something you don't want to hear. Nobody whose smelly lunch is in the front seat. Nobody forcing you to listen to music, and safer than most drivers. But I think lawyers who are not open to it are really going to miss the boat, because there's a lot of ways. We are expensive. I mean, I couldn't afford to hire myself. Is that crazy? And I think there are a lot of ways to go after the expense of the legal profession, and AI is going to be one of them.
Right. Okay. Yeah, good stuff. We could probably have you back to talk more about all that on a whole new episode.
Oh my gosh, the world according to Stephanie.
All right. Stephanie, if people would like to connect with you and learn more, where can they go? What should they do?
You can always go to gtlaw.com, or you can Google me, Stephanie Quincy, and it'll take you straight there. And my email and phone number is on my bio, my Greenberg Traurig. Thank you, by the way, for pronouncing it correctly. GT is out there and I'm easy to find.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching. Thank you very much, Stephanie Quincy, for joining us today and sharing your insights into the workplace law here in Arizona and throughout the U.S.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.